treasure of Johnny Weissmuller. 52 national championships, 67 world's records, 4 of them still stand. He never lost a swimming competition in his life.
The world knew Johnny Weissmuller as Tarzan, the Olympic champion, but everything was built on a lie. He wasn't even American. For 80 years, he lived in fear that his secret would destroy him. He switched identities with his own brother, changed church records, fooled 5 wives. Even his son never knew the truth, but the lies were just the beginning. What happened to Johnny and his son in their final years was far worse. 2 men, 2 different paths, but the same tragic ending. Today, we uncover the dark truth Hollywood tried to bury. The world knew him as Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic legend, the original Tarzan. But the truth about his life was more complicated. He wasn't even born in America, though he told everyone he was. Johnny was actually born as Johann Peter Weissmuller on June 2nd, 1904, in Freidorf, Romania. At the time, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. For years, he claimed he was born in Windber, Pennsylvania, but that was a lie. And not just a small one. It was a plan created by his entire family. The problem came before the 1924 Olympics. Officials asked for proof of his American citizenship. If Johnny didn't have it, he couldn't compete. So he and his mother made a bold decision. They switched his identity with his younger brother, Peter. Johnny became Peter John Weissmuller, supposedly born in Pennsylvania. Even the church records were changed. Someone added the name John to Peter's baptism entry using different ink and handwriting. The lie worked, but Johnny was never free from it. He worried for the rest of his life that if the truth came out, his medals would be taken away. His reputation would be ruined. His secret was so well hidden that even his own son didn't learn the truth until after Johnny died in 1984. Johnny's life in America began in January 1905. He was just 7 months old when his family arrived at Ellis Island. They had spent 12 days on a ship, the SS Rotterdam, coming from Holland. His parents, Peter and Elizabeth, had very little money, just $23.50, maybe even less. They were headed to Windber, Pennsylvania. A relative had paid for their trip. Peter found work as a coal miner, and their second son, Peter Jr., was born that September. In 1908, the family moved to Chicago. They rented a modest home near Lincoln Park and reunited with Elizabeth's parents. The neighborhood was filled with German-speaking immigrants from Freidorf. It felt familiar. As a boy, Johnny often visited the zoo nearby. That early love for animals would later shine through when he played Tarzan. Ironically, his father didn't become a United States citizen until 1937, long after Johnny had won Olympic gold. At age 9, Johnny got polio. The disease was deadly, and it left many kids paralyzed. But a doctor gave some advice. Try swimming to regain strength. Johnny took the advice. He snuck into the YMCA by lying about his age. He also swam at Fullerton Beach in Lake Michigan. Slowly, his body got stronger. His recovery was so complete that by age 11, he was winning races. He also ran and high jumped. The boy who had once been weak was now a force. Swimming had saved his life, and soon it would make him famous. But the fear of being exposed never left him. In 1924, a congressman from Illinois questioned Johnny's citizenship. That's when the full family cover-up kicked in. Johnny and his mother pretended he was Peter John Weissmuller, born in Pennsylvania. His real brother, Peter, acted as though he was the Romanian-born one. The church records were changed, and Johnny denied any connection to Romania. He kept this up for life. Not one of his 5 wives knew the truth, not even his son. After Johnny died, his son raised a toast to the old man. He sure could keep a secret. By 16, Johnny had serious talent but needed a coach. In 1920, he tried out at the Illinois Athletic Club. Coach William Backrack was known for being strict. When he saw Johnny swim, he saw raw talent, but also sloppy technique. He told Johnny they'd have to start from zero. Johnny listened. He had dropped out of school after his abusive father left, but he was smart and disciplined. Backrack's training was intense. Johnny wasn't even allowed to compete at first. The coach wanted everything perfect. That hard work paid off fast. In 1922, Johnny had a year no one had ever seen before in swimming. He won 9 national championships. He broke 24 world records. Some days he entered 5 events and won them all. He competed in everything from sprints to the pentathlon. By 1923, he held most of the world's records in distances from 50 meters to 500 yards. That year, he also added 15 American records. He traveled constantly for competitions. Half the year, he was living out of suitcases, competing in cities all over the United States. One of his most legendary swims came in open water, 100 yards in 52.8 seconds. That time stood for decades. Then came the 1924 Olympics in Paris. Johnny was just 20, but he was already a superstar. He won 3 gold medals in the 100-meter freestyle, the 400-meter freestyle, and the 4x200 relay. He also helped the United States win a bronze in water polo. In the 100-meter final, he beat his hero, Duke Kahanamoku. Before the race, Duke had said, "Johnny, good luck. The most important thing is to get the American flag up there 3 times." Johnny did exactly that, but it wasn't just his medals that fans loved. Between events, Johnny and his teammate Stubby Kruger put on silly diving shows. Johnny would do perfect dives, while Stubby did clown routines. The crowd loved it so much they demanded more. Eventually, Olympic officials banned such fun from future games. In 1928, Johnny went to the Amsterdam Olympics. He won 2 more gold medals, the 100-meter freestyle and the 4x200 relay. That brought his Olympic total to 5 golds and 1 bronze. He could have won more, but officials pulled him from the 400-meter event to help the water polo team, which didn't even medal. Still, Johnny's record was near perfect. After one early loss in 1921, he never lost another amateur race. In 1927, he swam the 100-yard freestyle in 51 seconds, a record that stood for 17 years. In 1940, as a professional, he swam it even faster, 48.5 seconds. But since he was no longer an amateur, it didn't count officially. In the summer of 1931, something unexpected happened at the Hollywood Athletic Club. MGM screenwriter Cyril Hume was working out when he saw a man swimming laps with perfect form. That man was Johnny Weissmuller, a 5-time Olympic gold medalist. People often stopped to watch him swim, but Hume saw more than just an athlete. He saw the perfect Tarzan. MGM had already picked someone else to play the role, Herman Brix, but Brix got injured during another film. Now the studio was back to square one. When Hume saw Johnny, all 6'3" of him and 190 pounds of muscle, he knew right away this was their jungle hero. He told producer Bernard Hyman. Hyman met Johnny and was immediately impressed. When Johnny said his name, Hyman joked that it was too long for a movie poster. But once he heard about the Olympic medals, he changed his mind. "Fine," he said, "we'll just make the marquee bigger and put lots of swimming in the film." Filming started on October 31st, 1931. It was finished in just 8 weeks. But this wasn't Johnny's first time in front of a camera. 3 years earlier, in 1929, he had a tiny role in a movie called Glorifying the American Girl. He played an Adonis, wearing nothing but a fig leaf. It was a short, silent appearance in a pre-code musical full of bold costumes and even nudity. Johnny was in New York at the time, promoting swimwear for BVD. A film producer saw him and offered the role, but BVD didn't like their star model appearing so exposed on screen. Most of Johnny's footage was cut. Still, the film was later restored to its full 96 minutes, and his appearance is now a small but curious part of film history. BVD had a strong grip on Johnny's career. He had been their top model since 1928, earning $500 a week, much more than MGM's original offer of $175. Johnny wasn't just modeling. He helped design new swimsuits, including the one-piece tank suit and early swim trunks. BVD didn't want to lose him, so MGM made a deal. They offered more money, $250 a week, and agreed to feature MGM actresses like Marie Dressler in BVD ads. It worked. Johnny joined the cast, and the crossover promotion was one of the first of its kind in Hollywood. When Tarzan the Ape Man premiered in March 1932, Johnny became an international star overnight. The film was a major hit, even during the Great Depression. Audiences loved the exciting jungle scenes, the thrilling stunts, and Johnny's now famous Tarzan yell. A New York Times critic described the yell as sounding like someone blowing on a comb covered in paper. It was strange, wild, and unforgettable. MGM marketed Johnny as the only man in Hollywood who's natural in the flesh and can act without clothes. He barely spoke in the film, but his physical presence told the story. He also had strong chemistry with his co-star Maureen O'Sullivan, who played Jane. They would go on to star in 6 Tarzan films together. One of Johnny's few lines, Tarzan, Jane, became legendary, even though most people misquote it as "Me Tarzan, you Jane." His jungle yell became so iconic that it was played at his funeral in 1984, but fame came with a cost. MGM wanted Johnny to appear single for his fans, so when they found out he had married actress Bobby Arnst in 1931, they stepped in. They paid Arnst $10,000, a huge amount at the time, to agree to a divorce. Just days after it was finalized in 1933, Johnny married Mexican actress Lupe Velez. Their marriage was loud and chaotic. They fought often, and gossip magazines loved the drama. In one wild story, Johnny chased Lupe through a London hotel while wearing barely anything, with the Queen of Holland watching and cheering him on. They divorced in 1939. Lupe died by suicide in 1944. Johnny would go on to marry 5 times in total, but his first marriage was the one that showed just how much control studios had over their stars. Johnny's on-screen connection with Maureen O'Sullivan helped carry the Tarzan films to even greater popularity. Their relationship felt real, even though they spoke very little. Maureen had been known for playing soft, quiet characters, but director Felix Feist told her to be bold during her screen test. That advice won her the role of Jane. Their second film together, Tarzan and His Mate, in 1934, was especially daring. It featured Maureen in a revealing costume and even an underwater ballet where Jane swam nude. Of course, it wasn't Maureen in those scenes. It was Olympic swimmer Josephine McKim as a body double. The scenes caused an uproar. Maureen received hate mail. Someone even tried to kidnap her. After the strict Hays Code went into effect later that year, future Tarzan films became more modest. When Tarzan Finds a Son came out in 1939, there was a problem. Tarzan and Jane couldn't have a child on screen because they weren't married, so instead of having their own baby, they adopted an orphan. Maureen wanted to leave the series during this film. They actually filmed a version where Jane dies, but test audiences hated it, so the studio changed the ending to let Jane live. Years later, Maureen looked back at her time as Jane with mixed feelings. She said it was tough, but admitted it changed her life. "Tarzan saved me," she said. "We didn't think they'd go on like they have, in perpetuity." They're classic, aren't they? In 1948, Johnny Weissmuller was 44 and no longer the muscular young man who once swung through the jungle as Tarzan. MGM dropped the Tarzan series and dropped him with it. Most stars would have faded, but not Weissmuller. Just months later, on February 1948, producer Sam Katzman gave him a new chance. He offered him a 5-year contract to make jungle-themed films, but there was a catch. Weissmuller had to keep his weight at 190 pounds or less. If he gained even 1 pound over, it would cost him $5,000. Up to 10 pounds, that meant $50,000 gone out of a $75,000 paycheck. Katzman didn't sugarcoat it. If he can't lose it through exercise, he'll lose it through worry, he said. Filming for the first Jungle Jim movie began on August 3, 1948. Virginia Gray was cast as the female lead. Columbia Pictures saw something in this new version of Jungle Hero. They produced 16 Jungle Jim films between 1948 and 1955. Each one had a budget of at least $350,000. For most of the series, he was Jungle Jim. But in the last 3 films, licensing issues meant he played Johnny Weissmuller, yet the jungle setting and adventures stayed the same. Fans still counted them as Jungle Jim stories. Weissmuller didn't stop there. After the films ended, he brought Jungle Jim to television. A 26-episode syndicated series began on September 26, 1955. It ran until March 19, 1956. In this version, the character's world grew. No longer just a lone man with a chimpanzee named Tamba, Jungle Jim now had a son named Skipper, a friend named Kasim, and an ally in Commissioner Morrison. The show even left Africa. Some episodes took Jim to India, the South Seas, and South America, wherever his guiding skills were needed. Unlike the movies, this Jungle Jim didn't hunt. He only allowed tourists to shoot animals with cameras. That moral stance set him apart from other adventurers and even limited his earnings in the story. Even though the show didn't last long, it was rerun for years. New generations discovered Weissmuller as a hero of the wild, now on their home TV screens. With both film and television combined, Johnny Weissmuller built a 25-year career playing just 2 roles, Tarzan and Jungle Jim. Between the 28 films and the TV episodes, that was nearly all he ever played, outside of a small role as Adonis in 1929 and and a part in Swamp Fire in 1946. Everything else was either jungle or jungle adjacent. In fact, in the last few films, he wasn't even pretending anymore. His character was literally named Johnny Weissmuller. He had become a version of himself, a man forever tied to vines, wild animals, and heroic rescues. It was such a rare thing, an actor playing a version of the same type of man for 2.5 decades and still being loved for it. Hollywood gave him a star on the Walk of Fame for it. This career wasn't built on acting skill alone. Weissmuller had something most actors didn't, an elite body. Long before he stood in front of a camera, he was one of the best swimmers in the world. He won 5 Olympic gold medals and broke 67 world records in the 1920s. When MGM cast him as Tarzan in 1932, they promoted him as the only man in Hollywood who can act without clothes. It wasn't just a joke. He looked like a statue come to life. In the jungle films, he did many of his own stunts. Underwater battles, vine swings, wrestling animals. It all looked believable because he really could move like that. Even in his 50s, during the TV run, critics said he looked better than most men his age. He didn't try to overact. He stayed calm, confident, and physical. That worked. It made him believable. It made him iconic. While all this was happening, back in 1940, something else important occurred. On September 23rd of that year, Johnny Weissmuller Jr. was born in San Francisco. His father was in town performing in Billy Rose's Aquacade, a water show at the Golden Gate International Exposition. That show had made him a star even before the movies. His wife at the time, Beryl Scott, gave birth to Johnny Jr., her only child with him. She was Weissmuller's 3rd wife out of 5. The baby arrived while his father dazzled crowds with water stunts, and that birth would forever tie Johnny Jr. to the Bay Area. As he grew up, Johnny Jr. followed in his father's footsteps, quite literally into the water. He attended the University of Southern California and swam competitively. He didn't just do it for sport. It was about measuring himself against the legend of his father. After college, he joined the United States Navy. There, he specialized in underwater demolition, one of the riskiest jobs in the military. These men cleared mines before sea landings. It took insane breath control, strength, and nerves of steel. He used his inherited talents not for applause, but for duty. Then came Hollywood. In 1958, when he was only 18, Johnny Jr. got his first role in Andy Hardy Comes Home, alongside Mickey Rooney. It wasn't a huge part, but it opened a door. Years later, that door led to someone big, George Lucas. Weissmuller Jr. landed a chrome-faced robot role in Lucas's 1971 film THX 1138. 2 years later, he showed up again in American Graffiti, credited as Badass Number 1. It was a small role, but it placed him next to rising stars like Harrison Ford and Richard Dreyfuss. His acting life continued with voice work in the 1975 adult animation parody Tarzan, Shame of the Jungle, a cheeky nod to his dad's legacy. He appeared in shows like The Streets of San Francisco, playing characters named Duke, Mickey, and Gino, but it was on stage where he delivered his most powerful performance, as Chief Bromden in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at the Little Fox Theater. It was the kind of role that showed he wasn't just riding on his father's name, he had real dramatic range. And yet, despite the film credits and stage work, something pulled him back to his roots. In 1973, Johnny Jr. went back to San Francisco and started working on the docks. He became a longshoreman. It shocked many, but to him, it made sense. It was about finding balance. He didn't want to live only in his father's shadow, so he chose physical labor, working side by side with men who didn't care about Tarzan or Jungle Jim, and he stayed, even as he kept acting on the side, appearing in films like Massive Retaliation, 1984, and Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, 1985. He remained loyal to the docks. That dual life lasted decades. When he retired in 2005, he began writing a book about his years as a longshoreman. It mattered to him, maybe even more than the acting. His final movie role came in 1988 as a bounty hunter in Wildfire. Like him, the character lived between two worlds, chasing something more than just fame. But Johnny Jr.'s adventures didn't stop on land. He was a sailor, a serious one. He competed in multiple Transpac races, 2,200 to 25-mile yacht races from California to Hawaii. These were brutal, lasting from 5 to 14 days. He didn't just do one or two, he became a regular. He was a member of yacht clubs in San Francisco, Hawaii, and Acapulco. That triangle of places told a quiet story. story. San Francisco was his birthplace. Acapulco was where his father passed away in 1984. Hawaii was where the races brought him joy. His wife, Diane, once said he was really a swashbuckler. He filled the room. That was Johnny Jr., part sailor, part actor, part dock worker, a man of many lives. In 1974, everything changed for Johnny Weissmuller. He was 70 years old, still strong, still active, and still swimming almost every day, just like he had done since winning 5 Olympic gold medals and setting 67 world records. But then he had a terrible accident. He broke his hip and leg. For a man who had spent his whole life being fast, strong, and nearly indestructible, this was a cruel blow. He was the same man who played Tarzan in 12 films and did many of his own stunts, swinging on vines, diving off cliffs, wrestling wild animals. Suddenly, he couldn't even walk. Recovery was slow and painful. The hospital stay was long. He couldn't move like he used to. That accident didn't just break his bones, it broke the rhythm of a life built on movement. While he was still in the hospital, the doctors gave him even worse news. They found out he had a serious heart condition. It didn't make sense. How could someone who had spent his whole life in top physical shape, someone who had never lost a competitive race, have a weak heart? Doctors were surprised. Johnny was shocked. He had survived polio as a child by swimming every day. That same swimming had turned him into a legend. But now, even that wasn't enough. His strong body had protected him for decades, but it couldn't fight off time or genetics. He had to accept that even the greatest athletes couldn't outrun aging. Then, in 1977, just 3 years later, things got worse. Johnny had a series of strokes. They hit him hard. He was 73 and already struggling with limited mobility from the earlier accident. Now, the strokes took more from him. His strength, his balance, even parts of his speech. His body started shutting down. The man who once swung through jungles was now using a wheelchair. His iconic Tarzan yell, once loud and proud, became weak and unrecognizable. His wife, Maria, said he still tried to let it out sometimes, but it just wasn't the same. The strokes had done real damage, physically and emotionally. For someone whose whole identity was tied to his body, this was heartbreaking. In 1979, Johnny moved into the motion picture and television country house and hospital in Woodland Hills. It was a place where former stars went when they needed care. Many old friends and colleagues were there. Even in his condition, people still asked him to do the Tarzan yell, and he would try with a smile. The staff admired him for staying kind and cheerful despite everything. His condition stabilized for a while, but deep down, everyone knew he was nearing the end. Still, he was surrounded by photos, memorabilia, and people who loved and respected him. That same year, Johnny made a big decision. He left Hollywood and moved to Acapulco, Mexico with Maria. It wasn't random. Acapulco had been the filming location for Tarzan and the Mermaids, his last Tarzan movie in 1948. He had great memories there. He even bought a hotel there once with his friend John Wayne. He built a villa on a hill right near the ocean and the cliffs he used to dive from. Even though people worried he wouldn't get proper care so far from California, Johnny felt at peace. He lived in Acapulco for 4 more years, looking out at the ocean every day. On January 20th, 1984, he passed away from pulmonary edema. He was 79. His wife and daughter were by his side. Johnny had one last request. At his funeral, they played his famous Tarzan yell 3 times. It echoed through the cemetery as his coffin was lowered into the ground. That sound had made him a legend. Even though most people didn't know it had been edited in post-production, it still belonged to him. His funeral was no ordinary affair. It included a 21-gun salute, something usually reserved for presidents or military heroes. This was arranged with help from Senator Ted Kennedy and President Ronald Reagan. Johnny Weissmuller had meant that much. He was more than an actor. He was a symbol of strength, courage, and determination. Even after Johnny's death, his legacy lived on, especially through his son. Johnny Weissmuller Jr. had taken a different path. In 1973, he moved back to San Francisco and started working as a longshoreman. He worked the docks for 32 years. People there knew him not as Tarzan's son, but as a hard-working man who didn't shy away from tough labor. He loved that life, but he also loved stories. His co-workers said he could spin a tale like no one else. So, when he retired in 2005 at age 65, he started writing a book about life on the docks. It was his way of capturing the voices of real working-class people and carving out an identity of his own. But just months into retirement, in early 2006, everything changed. He started feeling tired, losing losing weight. At first, he thought it was just age catching up with him, but it was something far worse. He was diagnosed with advanced liver cancer, stage 4. There wasn't much time left. Friends said he handled the news with calm and dignity. He told them he had already lived many lives. He had raced yachts, trained with the Navy, acted in films, and worked hard on the docks. Still, the news was crushing. His writing project remained unfinished. The longshoreman's voice he wanted to preserve would never be fully told. On July 27, 2006, Johnny Weissmuller Jr. passed away at a hospital in San Francisco. He was 65. His family was with him. His wife Diane, his daughter Heidi, and his stepson. His funeral was held on August 3rd. It brought together an unusual mix of people: Hollywood actors, dock workers, Navy veterans, and old friends from the yacht races. The San Francisco Chronicle ran his obituary on July 31st and described him simply: dock worker, actor, yacht racer. That order said everything. Johnny Jr. had made peace with being more than just the son of a legend. He had lived on his own terms, in his own world, and left behind a quiet, powerful legacy.